Revealed. Incredible text from my daughter exposed a shocking family divide over 5 days in Cabo. Sarah had dreamed of this moment for years finally. A family vacation that promised sun, laughter, and a chance to reconnect. After countless shifts at the hospital, each filled with life and death decisions that left her sleep-deprived and strung out, she envisioned this trip to Cabo as a well-deserved escape. But as she packed the last of the suitcases, she was haunted by a lurking anxiety. Would her children Emily, with her soft insecurities, and Jake, her dynamic success, actually enjoy this time together? At the terminal, Jake, animated and brimming with sunny charm, effortlessly turned heads as he joked about the upcoming adventure. But as Sarah watched Emily, who stood off to the side, picking at the hem of her sweater, a pit formed in her stomach. The weight of expectations pressed down heavily on Sarah. She wanted so desperately for Emily to feel worthy, to shine beside her brother without constantly comparing herself. Yet, the pressure of maintaining peace between them was suffocating. As they soared over endless azure waters, a gnawing question plagued Sarah. How could she help Emily emerge from Jake's shadow? His extraordinary feats were a source of pride but compounded Emily's struggle to find her own identity. Her smile faltered at that thought. And with it, her hopes for this vacation began to dim. When they landed and set foot on the white sands, Sarah felt hope flicker to life again, only to be met with a jarring ping from Emily's phone. A text from a friend lighted up the screen, revealing the internal battle Emily waged about feeling invisible. A wave of panic washed over Sarah, compounded by the realization that the cherished trip could become a catalyst for more hurt than happiness. She held onto that text like a lifeline, knowing they couldn't bury Emily's hurt under the tropical sun. They settled in at a beachside dinner, laughter erupting at first but quickly shifting to silence. Each smile felt strained. The gulf between siblings was palpable. Jake, in his self-absorbed glee, inadvertently worsened the divide with dismissive comments about Emily's college choice, branding her a follower. Sarah's heart raced. Torn between love for both of her children and fierce protection of Emily, the fear of losing her essence loomed like an invisible threat. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the sun began its descent, casting an amber hue over the water, Sarah felt her anxiety swell. The tension between her children crescendoed, seeping into every moment of their paradise. Could she bridge this chasm? Would her insistence on having a harmonious family only exacerbate the problem? She watched helplessly as Jake's dismissive laughter displaced Emily's silence, igniting long-buried anger. Then an unexpected moment pierced the chokehold of discomfort. Emily picked up her guitar, the familiar notes resonating, yet the weight of their struggle hung heavy in the air. In the hushed aftermath, with the rhythm softly echoing memories, Sarah's heart pounded. They felt the pulse of a shared love. Would it be enough to heal their fractures? As Emily's voice quivered and Jake hesitated, Sarah recognized the truth of their connection, but dread sullied the moment. Would this be their salvation, or merely a fleeting illusion in the darkening shadows? The night loomed ahead, thick with uncertainty, each twist beckoning to reveal more hurt, more fear, amplifying the doubts that threatened to drown their family in silence forever. The air wrapped around Sarah like a heavy blanket, filled with salt and the stirring unease that had settled since their arrival. Emily's soft strumming faded into silence, taking with it the fragile bond they sought to revive. Sarah turned to observe her children, each consumed by their own thoughts, as if invisible walls had risen between them. How could she reignite the connection they once shared? The night sky became a canvas of starlit possibilities, teasing Sarah with visions of a picturesque family vacation. She watched as families around them laughed and embraced, their joy hammering home her own family's dissonance. The absence of laughter, once a hallmark of their outings, echoed painfully in her chest. Suddenly, the vibrant scene felt foreign, overshadowed by an unyielding tension she couldn't shake. Then it struck her. She needed to act, to confront the feelings stifled beneath the surface before they solidified into long-standing rifts. What would it take for each of her children to acknowledge the struggles they faced? She had spent years navigating the labyrinth of life and death decisions in the hospital, yet couldn't seem to find a way through this familial maze. "Jake, can I talk to you for a minute?" Sarah called, her voice steady, infused with a newfound determination. The buzz of evening festivities quieted slightly as Jake turned, eyeing her with curiosity. Emily shifted uncomfortably beside them, her guitar forgotten, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on her shoulders. Jake sauntered closer, a playful grin lingering, but Sarah knew she had to strip away the layers of ease he wore like armor. "What you said earlier about Emily, I need you to understand how it affects her." She took a breath, measuring her words. "You don't see the struggle she faces trying to carve out her own identity next to you." Jake's expression faltered just for a moment. "Mom, I was only joking. It's all in good fun." "Fun for you may feel like ridicule to her," Sarah pressed on, her heart racing with conviction. "Humor shouldn't come at the cost of her self-esteem. I need you to support your sister. Make her feel like she can shine too." She caught a glimpse of something shifting in Jake's demeanor, the flicker of realization that perhaps he hadn't considered the impact his words carried. This was the spark she needed, a crack in his facade that could lead to understanding. Meanwhile, Emily stood in the periphery, her emotions roiling like the ocean waves beyond the shore. Sarah turned to her next, committing to carry the same compassion she now sought in Jake. "Emily, can you share how you feel with us? This is your space too. We're all here together, and I want you to know you're not invisible." The air was electric, charged with vulnerability. Emily hesitated, her eyes cast down, tracing patterns in the sand. But as Sarah focused on her, the melody of family life began to float back into view. Would her daughter find the courage to break the silence? "Sometimes it feels like I don't matter, especially next to Jake," Emily finally confessed, her voice barely above a whisper yet imbued with raw honesty. "I know he doesn't mean it, but it still hurts." The tension that had thickened in the air gave way to an emotional current that transported them beyond their individual struggles. This raw honesty was a flame that could ignite a path toward healing if Sarah navigated it carefully. What revelations awaited them within this vulnerability? Could the dam of hurt finally break, cleansing the barriers that had emerged between them? "Let us promise to keep communicating," she urged quietly, looking between Jake and Emily. "You are both extraordinary in your own ways, and together, you can support each other." As the stars blinked above, signifying a world of possibilities, Sarah took a breath, nervous yet resolute. It was a decisive step toward mending their collective spirit. Yet deep down, she felt another wave of uncertainty. What if the wounds ran deeper than she realized? The night held promise, but it also loomed with the unacknowledged truths they still had to confront. Would their fragile connection withstand the revelations that awaited them? The tug of reality beckoned, daring the family to plunge into uncharted waters. The silence that followed Emily's confession hung heavy in the air, pregnant with unspoken fears and hopes. Sarah could see the flicker of emotions in Jake's eyes, the playful bravado wavering. She knew this was their moment, one that could either sink them deeper into discord or lift them toward understanding. "What can we do to help each other?" she asked, anchoring herself in the spirit of collaboration. The question lingered, an invitation to share spaces once occupied only by doubt. Jake's shoulders sagged, and for the first time the bravado slipped away. "I guess I didn't think about it like that," he replied, his voice low, vulnerability creeping into the edges. "I just thought it was how siblings are. You know, teasing. It's never been serious for me." "Teasing can cut just as deeply as any criticism," Emily interjected. Her voice was stronger now, bolstered by the validation of their mutual struggle. "You might not see it, but it gets to me." Jake nodded slowly, processing her words like a puzzle piece finally fitting into place. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize it hurt you so much. I'll try to do better." Sarah felt a swell of hope crash over her, a refreshing wave against the shore of upheaval. But it also brought a realization of her own. She too had her role to play in this dynamic. How often had she overlooked the nuances of their relationship while immersed in her career? The sacrifices that she made professionally had cast shadows on her personal life, and now those shadows were threatening the bond she held dear. "Let us not just leave it here," Sarah urged, a determined glint in her eyes. We need to have these conversations more often, even when they're uncomfortable. Acknowledge what we're all feeling, even when the issues feel small. The children exchanged glances, their initial hesitation melting into reluctant agreement. It was the first step in a long journey they were embarking on together. Yet Sarah felt a gnawing anxiety twist in her gut. Would they truly commit? Acting on intent was much more challenging than simply pronouncing words. That uncertainty hung around her like the dusk settling over the beach, the evening transitioning into night. What if we set a family night once a month? She proposed. A time when we can discuss not just the good things but also the harder stuff, feelings, worries, anything. I can take notes, Emily offered, a tentative smile breaking through. So we can remember what we talked about. Jake smirked, his playful spirit returning in small measures. And I can bring the snacks. The tension broke, laughter spilling between them, interwoven with an electric sense of clarity. Yet beneath that excitement lay the undeniable truth. Building a strong family connection would require more than just monthly meetings or sweet snacks. It would necessitate consistency and vulnerability, a commitment to dive deep, to face the monsters that lurked in the corners of their minds. As they sat in a small circle on the warm sand, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on the shifts occurring around her. What she initially perceived as a fractured existence could transform into something lush and thriving if they each chose to invest in one another. With the stars now littered across the night sky, Sarah extended a hand, inviting her children to join her in a simple but symbolic gesture. Let us promise to support each other. Not just tonight but every day moving forward. They joined hands, a fragile yet palpable connection forming as they faced the vastness of the ocean. Waves crashed rhythmically, mirroring their own tumultuous emotions, yet calmed by their newfound resolve. But deep inside, Sarah felt a seismic shift unsettling her. The deeper truths of their dynamics had just begun to scratch the surface. What had she overlooked about herself, not just as a mother, but as Sarah, the woman beyond the identity of caregiver? Would this journey of recapturing family bonds also redefine her sense of self? The haunting questions lingered like drifting fog, as Sarah realized their individual journeys were only beginning. The ocean breathed a challenge into the night, daring her and her children to explore not just each other, but themselves. As they sat in silence, hand in hand, she knew one thing. The tides of change were upon them, but where would that lead? The weeks passed since that fateful evening on the beach, marked by an atmosphere of cautious optimism. Though the family nights were slow to gain momentum, there were small victories. Jake made a genuine effort to ease up on the teasing, and Emily increasingly contributed her thoughts on subjects that once intimidated her. Each meeting carved out sacred space for their individual vulnerabilities, and for Sarah, the blossoming of their bond felt transformative but burdensome. Yet something nagged at Sarah. The once celebrated momentum felt like an albatross, a reality check that subtly uncovered cracks where laughter had thrived. Emotions simmered just below the surface, whipped by the winds of past grievances and current uncertainties. One evening, a stirring disruption came in the form of a message from her workplace. A project she had invested countless hours into was deemed unsuccessful. The realization that her team had missed critical deadlines festered like an open wound. As she sat with her laptop, reading her manager's comments, Sarah felt the weight of her dual responsibilities. The choice she faced was stark: devote herself fully to her career or embrace the familial path she had begun to forge. How ironic that in seeking connection with her children, she felt the tug of disconnection from her professional life. She closed the laptop with a decisive movement, her heart racing with a mix of anger and fear. How could she critique herself for failing to balance both worlds when the professional demands gnawed at her identity? The clarity she sought eluded her, shadowed by the daunting expectations of motherhood alongside career aspirations. That night during their family meeting, Sarah tried to cast aside her turmoil. As they discussed feelings, she scanned Emily and Jake's faces, searching for signs of resentment, but there was only sincerity. She opened the floor to them, inviting them to share their highs and lows of the week, all the while wrestling with her own unshared disappointments. Emily hesitated before speaking, revealing a struggle to fit in at school, a recurring theme for her. Everyone seems to have something special about them, and I just feel ordinary, she confessed. Jake, who had grown more perceptive, nodded in understanding instead of resorting to teasing. In that moment the air shifted, giving space not just for Emily's declaration, but also for Sarah's hidden shadows to emerge. Taking a breath, Sarah decided to break her own silence. I felt ordinary too, like I'm just drifting through my job without making a real impact. The words tumbled out like long-buried secrets clawing for release. Mom, you're not ordinary. You do so much, Jake exclaimed, disbelief carved on his face. That spark of genuine admiration deepened the emotional connection among them, yet beneath it lay the stark contrast of Sarah's inner turmoil, a chasm between their perception and her reality. The revelation hung heavy in the room, illuminating misunderstandings layered under their family dynamic. Sarah began to see her children not just as extensions of herself, but as mirrors reflecting her own fears and strengths. But clarity brought its own demand for change. How would she align her commitment to family with her professional goals? The unresolved conflict loomed larger. In seeking authenticity within her family, would she need to redefine her ambitions, or was she capable of navigating both worlds? As the meeting drew to a close, Sarah felt a disquieting urgency wash over her. The newfound emotional landscape had only begun to reveal itself. The very foundation of their family was built on both empowered connections and uncharted fears waiting in the dark corners of her identity. In that moment, a piercing realization struck her: this wasn't just a family journey. It was about unearthing the authentic Sarah beneath the roles she had played and the expectations she embraced. Yet, the question still echoed nebulously. Could she redefine her career without sacrificing her family? The pressure compounded under the weight of her mounting doubts as she replayed the emotions shared around the circle that night. What awaited Sarah as she ventured deeper into this uncharted territory? Would she have the strength to forge a path that embraced both self-discovery and family connection? The decision loomed like the tide edging closer to the shore, and as Sarah stared into the expanse of the ocean, her heart thundered in anticipation not of mere change but of potential transformation where everything hung in the balance. The time had come to face the vast unknown that awaited her. The morning sun filtered in through the window as Sarah sat at the dining table, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, replaying the discussions from their family meeting. Despite the chaos in her mind, she forced herself to revel in the warmth radiating from the mug. Every sip felt like it was grounding her, urging her to be present. But even as the warmth spread through her, a chill clung to her thoughts. How had they come so far, only for her to feel so lost? It was a Saturday, one of those rare weekends that felt unencumbered by deadlines or obligations. The children had planned a hike at a nearby nature reserve, a chance to immerse themselves in the vivid hues of fall. They wanted to be together, which gave her a flicker of hope that their newfound connection deserved preservation. But what if the depths of her professional struggle threatened to suffocate their progress? As they set out, the air crisp with the scent of pine and damp earth, Sarah couldn't help but swallow the growing knot in her stomach. The tranquil surroundings seemed almost ironic against the tumult within her. The mountains loomed majestically in the distance, echoing the peaks and valleys of her emotional state. Each footstep felt heavy as her mind drifted back to her workplace troubles, like an anchor that wouldn't relent. "Mom, look at this." Emily's delighted voice broke through her thoughts. The girl crouched to inspect a cluster of brightly colored mushrooms. Sarah watched her daughter, the light streaming through the trees casting a golden halo around her. That glitter in Emily's eyes reignited a flicker of determination within Sarah, the spark that had been nearly extinguished under pressure. "Those look amazing, Emily. Can you tell me more about them?" Sarah prompted, her heart swelling with pride as Emily launched into a fascinating explanation about the species and its environment. For a moment, Sarah allowed herself to forget about her looming deadlines and expectations. She saw how her encouragement resulted in a blossoming of confidence, in Emily a realization that self-discovery could occur outside the workplace as well. Jake, not to be overshadowed, joined in with enthusiastic facts about the local history of the area. The conversation flowed, each discovery weaving them closer together, creating a new layer of connection that reminded Sarah of what truly mattered. Yet, even amid their bonding, her concerns about work loomed like a persistent storm cloud above the clear blue sky. When they finally reached a scenic overlook, the vista before them was breathtaking, a tapestry of orange, red, and gold stretching far into the distance. The kids scrambled to find the perfect spot for a selfie, their laughter echoing against the vastness, and Sarah felt herself drawn into the moment. She took a step closer, searching for a way to encapsulate their joy. Yet a whisper of self-doubt echoed in her mind. Could she ever find a way to feel this kind of fulfillment in her career? She pulled out her phone, snapping pictures with a forced smile, all while her heart wrestled with the realization that something deeper needed to change. Was it possible to feel this connection amidst the clashing waters of professional identity and familial dedication? Returning home, these thoughts weighed heavily on her. The hike provided clarity, yet also realized a stark truth. The path to balance and fulfillment would be neither quick nor easy. Her competitors at work were relentless, and she was painfully aware that in the professional realm, being present at home did not yet equate to success. As the evening drew near, Sarah began sketching ideas for her next project, letting her creativity flow, carefully allowing her excitement to mask the fear that still lingered. But the nagging question remained. Could she redefine herself in her career before it swallowed her whole? With a deep breath, she committed to sharing her unfiltered thoughts in the next family discussion. But would her children understand? A cascade of worries surged. What would they think of her? Struggles? As night fell and the world became cloaked in shadows, Sarah looked out at the valley lit by the silvery glow of the moon. Beneath the serenity lay a restless torrent, and the next steps towards reconciliation with her identity felt daunting. What awaited her as she prepared to unravel her truths to her children? Would vulnerability forge even deeper familial bonds, or would the revelations drive a wedge between their burgeoning openness? The battle within her raged on between fear and the desire for authenticity. She was caught in a relentless tide. As dawn broke the next day, Sarah sat at her desk, staring blankly at the computer screen. The cursor blinked mockingly, an insistent reminder of the projects clanging for her attention. She could hear the kids downstairs, animatedly chatting over breakfast, their carefree laughter a sharp contrast to the burden hanging heavily on her shoulders. It was time to face the truth not just at work, but within herself. Today was the day she had promised herself to communicate openly with her children. The plan was simple, yet terrifying. To allow them insight into her struggles, her fears, and the nagging sense of inadequacy that threatened to engulf her. Sitting there, she felt like a diver at the edge of a cliff, peering into the depths below. She opened her notebook, the pages filled with sketches and ideas, but they felt futile against the storm raging inside her. What was her actual goal? To gain sympathy, or was it to teach them resilience? Was she willing to expose herself, not just as their mother but as a woman fighting a relentless tide? The kids wandered into her space, eager to share stories from breakfast. Emily's cheeks were flushed with excitement as she recounted a silly moment with Jake, who was already bouncing on his heels, ready to launch into his own tale of culinary triumphs. Sarah smiled, but deep down her heart raced. "Hey, can I talk to you guys for a minute?" Her voice trembled slightly as she gathered their attention, the casual atmosphere changing to one of anticipation. "Sure, Mom. What's up?" Emily replied, her eyes wide with curiosity. Taking a deep breath, Sarah struggled inwardly to find the right words. How to frame her vulnerability without burdening them. "I wanted to share something important with you. Lately I've been feeling overwhelmed. There are parts of my job that are really hard, and I need to let you know that sometimes I feel like I'm falling short." The room fell silent. Emily and Jake exchanged looks, their innocence cloaking them in uncertainty. She felt exposed, like she had just laid her soul bare. Would they understand the weight of her words? "What do you mean, Mom?" Jake's innocent question broke through her spiraling thoughts, his brow furrowed with genuine concern. "I mean that sometimes even adults struggle. I know I'm supposed to be strong for you both, but sometimes I don't feel quite good enough. I'm working so hard to cultivate a good life for us, but I worry about whether I'm succeeding," she confessed, raw honesty lacing her voice. Emily stepped closer, placing her tiny hand on Sarah's arm. "But you're our mom. You do so much for us. You give us everything." The sincerity in her words struck Sarah like a gentle wave, softening the edges of her turmoil. "Mom, you're just as brave as any superhero," Jake interjected, confidence radiating from his young face. "Maybe you could talk about it with your coworkers? They might help you out." Sarah felt two distinct currents collide within her. A rush of pride at their response while doubt still swam nearby. They were so young, yet their compassion hinted at an understanding beyond their years. The revelation that the kids perceived her struggles as part of the human experience filled her heart with warmth. "Maybe you're right," she said, a smile breaking through her earlier apprehension. "I could reach out for support. I can learn from them too." The conversation morphed into a delightful session of brainstorming ideas on how Sarah could tackle the work challenges ahead. They filled the room with hopeful suggestions: team-building exercises, workshops, taking small steps toward connection with colleagues. Her children's instinctual grasp of collaboration anchored her hope and illuminated paths she had overlooked. Yet, while Sarah reveled in this newfound camaraderie, something deeper loomed just beneath the surface. Would sharing her weaknesses enhance their bond? Or would it redefine their perception of the mother figure she had always strived to embody? With each idea flowed the tension between vulnerability and strength, and as they sat laughing and planning, Sarah could feel change coiling tightly within her, a revolution waiting to unfold. Filled with a new determination, she stared at the pending emails on her computer. In this moment, the path forward became less about personal perfection and more about learning, growing, and daring to be seen. But beneath the surface, another question remained: would the risk she took today echo positively through her family, or unleash unexpected waves of change that she wasn't prepared for? The thought lingered as she glanced at her children, their faith in her marred by the creeping doubts beginning to intertwine with her new resolve. What would be the ramifications of this newfound honesty? The battle for self-discovery had only just begun. As the sun climbed higher, Sarah settled back into her work routine, the words of her children bubbling in her mind like a freshly opened soda, both effervescent and unstable. There was an unexpected buoyancy in her heart, a tether to the idea of measuring her own struggles against their youthful wisdom. Yet, in the eye of this emotional storm, dread lingered like a dark cloud, whispering about the consequences of her transparency. The morning stretched on, punctuated by her attempts to engage with tasks she usually approached with confidence. Each email sent felt like she was wading through a thick fog of doubt. She had spent over a decade honing her skills in this field. Yet suddenly everything felt daunting. Could this newfound commitment to vulnerability translate into professional strength? She navigated through messages, her mind drifting back to the prior night. The sincerity in Jake's confident assertion that she was a superhero made her laugh. Yet it also clung to her like a mantle she didn't know how to wear. Could she validate that assessment while wrestling with her inadequacies? The dichotomy felt heavy. She was a mother, but also an individual entwined in a world that demanded perfection and poise. With gritted teeth, she opened a new email and typed a message to her colleague Steve. They had once shared a mutual understanding of the pressures that accompanied their positions. Would he see her differently now, after learning about her struggles? The thought of him knowing her uncertainties made her second-guess the importance of initiating deeper conversations. But as she poised her fingers over the keys, a flicker of resolve sparked within her. Perhaps it was time for a team meeting, not just about project objectives, but an opportunity for each person to share their challenges. If she could facilitate a space for transparency, it could strengthen their ties, foster understanding, and teach her about her own resilience. Envisioning the room filled with her coworkers, Sarah took another deep breath. Would they feel comfortable opening up in a professional setting? Her instincts screamed that vulnerability could transform the atmosphere, but a niggling fear insisted it could also lead to resentment or a feeling of imbalance, an emotional payload she hadn't considered. With hesitant determination, she sat down with a notepad to outline her thoughts. Each bullet point felt like a step taken forward, but every idea met a wall of hesitation. What if her confession of struggle mirrored across the room as a weakness? Her logical mind argued that being open about personal difficulties could shift workplace dynamics. Her fear whispered that it might isolate her or diminish her authority. As she drafted her message, the urge to include her children's advice flared momentarily. If they can face their own fears and become brave in their understanding, she thought, then so can I. But the imposter syndrome lingered, clawing at the edges of her bravery. Was she really enabling her team or simply elevating herself to a pedestal of vulnerability the others might resent? The psychological ramifications of transparency ceased to be an abstract concern. They became central to her intent as a professional. Sarah paused, her pen hovering above the page, contemplating her next move. The time had come to test her resolve, to see if her family's faith in her could bear the scrutiny of the professional world. Taking a deep breath, she hit send on the email. The action felt monumental, like selling a piece of her soul. And it wasn't simply about disclosing her struggles. It was about shifting the paradigm within her workplace, challenging norms that dictated silence over authenticity. Despite posting her message, anxiety knotted in her stomach. An array of possibilities unfurled in her mind: support, skepticism, disapproval, solidarity. Each prediction set roots of apprehension into her consciousness. What would Friday's team meeting reveal about her coworkers, and how would they respond to the breaking of professional decorum? The horizon was filled with uncertainty, but for the first time, Sarah felt a flicker of excitement. What would this decisive moment unveil in her journey? As the clock inched towards the end of the day, she knew change was upon her, rippling through her personal and professional lives. The stage was set, but would it bring growth or turbulence? Tomorrow would demand more of her than just courage. It would require her to walk the fragile line of authenticity and leadership. Would she stumble, or would she rise to the occasion? The stakes felt higher than ever as she braced for the first cracks in her carefully erected facade. Sarah awoke the next morning to a restless mind, thoughts colliding like storm clouds. The weight of her decision pressed heavily against her chest, a reminder of the vulnerability she had chosen to embrace. Her usual morning routine felt futile as she circulated anxiously through her thoughts, the anticipated team meeting tantalizingly close yet shrouded in uncertainty. After dropping her children off at school, she turned towards the office with a resolute heart. The distance felt vast, each mile amplifying her internal dialogue. Voices within swirled with conflicting sentiments. You're paving the way for transparency contrasted sharply with what if they judge you. The duality of empowerment and anxiety tugged at her, growing louder with each passing moment. Upon arriving at the office, an unexpected surge of adrenaline coursed through her body. The conference room loomed like an altar of authenticity, and she wrestled with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Would her colleagues see her as courageous, or would they fail to recognize the dual burden of leadership and authenticity she now bore? As she settled at the end of a long table, Sarah glanced at her team members filing in, each face a complex tapestry of expressions. Jake offered her a reassuring smile that ignited a flicker of confidence. Were there others who had also basked in the comfort of her children's wisdom, hiding their own echoing doubts behind corporate masks? In a candid moment, she took a deep breath, her chest lifting as she began talking about her struggles with balancing motherhood and work. She shared the weight of expectations that bore down on her shoulders, her voice quaking slightly. But as she spoke, a peculiar transformation began to unfurl. The words spilled from her lips unvarnished and raw, and the room seemed to inhale every syllable. To her surprise, Steve leaned forward, echoing her sentiments. You're not alone. I've struggled too, more than I let on. His voice wavered with sincerity, and Sarah's heart raced at the unexpected camaraderie. As he revealed his own silent battle, the dam of fear began to break, allowing others to share their hidden challenges as well. Moments of self-doubt, anxiety about looming deadlines, moments of feeling inadequate. Sarah felt momentum building, turning her initial trepidation into a gathering strength. The room transformed, a vibrant dialogue weaving a safety net of vulnerability that encompassed both shared fears and budding hope. Every confession was a stitch in the fabric of trust unraveling in real time. The psychological uplift felt palpable, each voice resonating with authenticity, revealing a depth of character she hadn't anticipated in her team. The unfolding discussions redefined her perception of leadership. Vulnerability didn't equate to weakness, but a strength that could unify them in ways previously unseen. Sarah realized that the very act of sharing her story ignited a courage within her colleagues, illuminating features they had buried beneath professional obligations. The meeting concluded on a note of collective empowerment, and laughter intermingled with hopeful anticipation for future conversations. Yet, even amid the excitement, a shadow flickered at the edges of Sarah's vision, a nagging thought about the extremes of transparency. Could they genuinely maintain this newfound openness when faced with corporate pressures, or would societal norms suffocate their connections? As her colleagues trickled out of the room, Sarah caught sight of Jake, who approached with a knowing expression. The weight behind his eyes mirrored her own turbulent thoughts. That was brave what you did, he said quietly, but you need to be careful with how much you expose. Comes with a price. His words hung in the air like an uninvited specter, prompting an internal battle within her. Would she sidestep the potential fallout of this openness, or continue to break through barriers, challenging her own definitions of strength even further? As she mulled over his advice, Sarah sensed the impending clash between authenticity and professional decorum looming larger than before. The meaningful conversations she had sparked were only the beginning, and the stakes felt higher now that her path forward had blurred. What would she discover about her leadership style if she pressed further into openness at work? Would she find balance in vulnerability? Or would it lead to unforeseen divisions and complications? The room vibrated with potential, but it was accompanied by an undercurrent of doubt. With every instinct battling for dominance, Sarah steeled herself for the journey ahead, where the line between personal and professional would continue to blur. Tomorrow would demand not just courage but a relentless pursuit of authenticity, inviting her to confront the unknown. Would she dare to find strength in exposing more? Or would she retreat into the safer confines of conventional leadership? The morning sun streamed through Sarah's office window, illuminating the space with a promise of clarity that lingered just beyond her reach. Yet, despite the vibrant dawn, she felt ensnared within a cloud of uncertainty. As she sipped her coffee, she replayed the previous day's events in her mind, dissecting every word spoken, every emotion exchanged. In that moment of solitude before the day unfolded, doubt drifted in with the light, casting shadows over her resolve. What if Jake was right? What if she had overstepped the boundaries of professionalism with her admissions? As she navigated through her thoughts, she recognized the gnawing question. Was she setting herself up for failure by embracing this vulnerable leadership style? Could it withstand the onslaught of corporate conservatism, where appearances often mattered more than truth? Determined not to retreat from the path she had chosen, Sarah flipped open her notebook, edging closer to a decision. With each stroke of her pen, she listed her aspirations as a leader. Central to that list was a fierce desire for unity, a shared experience that could transform not just her team but herself as well. Vulnerability could be a formidable weapon, but it also needed strategic consideration. What were the implications of forging deeper connections? As the clock inched towards noon, her team gathered for their weekly check-in. The atmosphere buzzed with an excitement she had ignited. Colleagues exchanged glances laced with an unspoken understanding. Sarah chose to mirror the energy in the room, diving headfirst into a discussion about the ongoing projects. But amidst the updates, she sensed a shift, a reluctance to share openly as the protective corporate shields began to rise again. A flicker of frustration coursed through her. "Let us keep our momentum going," she encouraged, forcing her voice to steady despite the rising tide of unease she sensed. "I saw how empowering our last conversation felt. Is there anything each of you are grappling with that we can address together?" Silence hung in the air, thick with the weight of repressed thoughts. The initial thrill from their earlier vulnerability now felt precarious. Just as Sarah worried they might slip back into silence, Lisa, the newest team member, tentatively raised her hand. "I've been feeling the stress of balancing deadlines and my personal life. It's been overwhelming," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. That was all it took, an ember sparking a wildfire. One by one, more team members began to share their own struggles, and with each revelation, Sarah crafted questions that not only acknowledged their challenges but drew upon her own. This time, however, it felt different. The words seemed tethered to the realities they faced outside the walls of the office. Yet, as they delved deeper into shared vulnerabilities, a nagging flash of fear returned. Could this openness threaten the cohesion they were trying to build instead of fortifying it? Sarah noticed Jake's furrowed brow as he listened. Was he preparing to caution her again, or was he processing something deeper? She caught his eye, an unspoken conversation conveying both trust and apprehension. Returning to her notes, she jotted a few key moments from the discussion. If they were to navigate this delicate balance of vulnerability and professionalism, they would need strategies. Intentional check-ins, mutual support mechanisms, perhaps even anonymous feedback channels to sustain the dialogue without fear of judgment. As the conversation wound down, Sarah felt invigorated by the shared authenticity of the session, but the undercurrent of caution remained. Just when she thought they had built a solid foundation, the reality of corporate pressures loomed larger than before, threatening to unravel the threads they had carefully woven together. In that moment, she realized she was on the precipice of something monumental, a struggle between her quest for a new leadership style and the outdated expectations of her role. Would she summon the strength to confront both her insecurities and the broader corporate culture that may resist this evolution? Tomorrow would bring testing time. She would need to confront a board meeting where her new strategies would either be validated or challenged. What stood on the other side of those doors? Rejection or acceptance? The stakes had escalated, and Sarah felt the weight of every heartbeat echoing the question of whether she could sustain this authenticity, or if the corporate world would close its ranks to her open heart. The morning sun illuminated Sarah's workspace, casting an inviting glow that belied her internal struggle. As she prepared for the board meeting, she could hear the familiar hum of classified discussions and strategic banter filtering in from the corridor. Each step toward the conference room felt monumental, a battleground where her commitment to authenticity would clash against the cold scrutiny of corporate standards. Today would demand everything from her, most importantly clarity. Fighting a rising tide of apprehension, Sarah positioned herself at the head of the table, her heart pounding in synchrony with the clock's relentless ticking. Her colleagues filtered in, each of them wrapped in their professional personas, sharply contrasting the vulnerability they had shared in previous meetings. Would they perceive her newfound openness as a liability? The meeting commenced with a customary round of project updates, and Sarah felt her anxiety amplify as discussions flitted through targets and metrics. When her moment arrived to present, a deep breath steadied her voice. As she outlined her vision for the team anchored in transparency, rather than mere performance, she observed subtle shifts on the faces around the table. Vulnerability doesn't diminish our professionalism. It enhances our connection, she asserted, powered by the optimism her children had ignited in her. When we open up about struggles, we create a space where collaboration thrives. Each word felt like a pebble cast into still waters, sending ripples into the dynamics of their environment. Yet doubt slithered through her resolve as she sensed mixed reactions, some nodding in agreement, while others remained apprehensive, their expressions unreadable. Confident in her conviction, she wove her personal narrative into the presentation, an honest account of the fear and uncertainty she had confronted not only at home but also in the workplace. I realized that acknowledging my own struggles allowed me to connect with my children more deeply, and I believe we can cultivate the same depth here. Sarah focused on those who nodded along, drawing from their energy, yet all at once her nerves flared again. Could she steer this ship despite the mounting pressure that threatened to push her back into the depths of corporate conformity? Then the board members began to engage not with sterile questions, but genuine curiosity. One older executive cautiously raised a hand. Are you saying we shouldn't just showcase our wins? That sharing failures is a vital part of growth? Yes, Sarah replied firmly, buoyed by the interaction. When we express our vulnerabilities, it can dismantle the barriers that stifle innovation and creativity. Transcending the fear of failure invites collaboration, harnessing our diverse experiences to foster resilience. The tension in the room began to lower, and Sarah's passion ignited something new among her colleagues. They leaned in intrigued. A spirited discussion unfolded, revealing burgeoning willingness to embrace alternatives. This was a pivotal moment, a shift from traditional corporate language cloaked within uniform expectations to a culture anticipating collective strength. As the meeting progressed, she suddenly felt a weight lifting. The atmosphere transformed, morphing from one of skepticism into heightened curiosity. Ideas flowed freely, as colleagues opened up, sharing not only their insights but also moments of adversity, demystifying their depersonalized professional identities. When the meeting concluded, a murmur of approval echoed through the room. Yet amidst the enthusiasm, there were still those lingering doubts. Could they sustain this spirit beyond the walls of the conference room? Would the corporate hierarchy pressure them to revert to their old ways? As they exited the room, Sarah caught sight of Jake's enthusiastic smile across the lobby from her, and her heart swelled with pride. His encouragement had been instrumental in guiding her through moments of doubt, enabling her to embrace her true self both at home and work. Reflecting on this, she recognized her own transition, from struggling to fit into predefined molds to confidently claiming the narrative of her journey. Days turned into a fortnight, and the newfound culture began to take root in the team. Weekly check-ins transformed from perfunctory updates to genuine conversations that respected individual experiences. The atmosphere shifted, fostering an openness that empowered everyone to voice their unique perspectives. Yet, Sarah understood that personal growth extended beyond titles or accolades. She witnessed true competence budding from within, people embracing hesitations, transforming into stronger, more collaborative entities. In her commitment to vulnerability, she uncovered a sense of leadership that emanated strength through authenticity. Through it all, Sarah achieved something profound. She finally discovered the balance between her personal and professional identities. The struggle that once tied her down had become a catalyst for growth, recognition, and fulfillment. As she stood in her office one evening, the sunset glimmering outside, she reflected on the journey that had led her here. The tides of change had reshaped her world, bringing undesired complexities into clarity. She felt empowered, recognizing how vulnerability could pave the way for authentic leadership and create lasting connections. From here, she was ready to cultivate not just professionally, but share her journey as a story well worth telling. Filled with gratitude for the lessons learned not just from her workplace, but from her children, she knew her new path would continue to evolve. Moreover, her identity as a compassionate, courageous leader was now firmly established. And for anyone watching her remarkable transformation unfold, Sarah was determined to ignite that same spark within them, because true resilience comes from intertwining vulnerability with courage. So as she looked out the window, smiling not just at the view but at the woman she had become, she felt inspired to share this story with the world beyond her walls. The possibilities were limitless, and she was ready to embrace them wholeheartedly, because every journey, every trial was a testament to the strength of being boldly human. Don't miss out. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment below with your reactions and theories. Let your voice be heard. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.